this time, we'll call to order the regular meeting of Finance Personnel Committee. This is July 8th, 2025. Carrie, roll please.
Alderperson Gantz.
Here.
Senator.
Here.
P-Rock.
Here.
Quigley.
Here.
Mayor Boyd.
I am here as well. Thank you. Item 2, approval of the minutes of the June 10th, 2025 regular meeting of Finance Personnel Committee.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Motion by Alderperson Gantz, seconded by Alderperson Quigley. Discussion, comments? You're all good. That said, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 3, public comment on matters not on the agenda. Comments made during the public comment period shall pertain only to matters under the jurisdiction of the Finance and Personnel Committee. Anyone in person or virtually have any public comment on matters not on the agenda, now is your time. I'm assuming everyone's here for something that's on the agenda, correct? Second time, any public comment on matters not on the agenda? And third and final time, any public comment on matters not on the agenda? Let's move on. Item 4, for consideration and possible action on the approval of the 2024 management letter and financial statements. Pam.
All right. I would like to welcome, we have a couple of our auditors here. We have Scott Sternhagen.
Did he literally just walk in as you said that?
That was good timing.
Scott,
He's
very
got
impressive.
really good timing.
I really am impressed.
And Elizabeth McMaster.
Elizabeth, you were here anyways.
I just handed out just before the meeting the documentation that they provided me that they're going to review with you.
Yeah. So, and the bound copies are on their way. It was issued today. So it's just a timing difference that it's getting printed as we speak and it's on its way. So we're working with it tonight. All right. So thank you everybody for having us today. Appreciate being here. Start by thanking Pam and everybody in finance and throughout the city really, because there's a lot of people that it takes a lot of information in order to get through an audit. And we can't tell you how much we appreciate everybody's hospitality and working with auditors to get through that. It's not easy. So thank you to her and her team. I'll start with, do they have both
I only
of
gave them the
these?
little one.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I will very quickly, when you do get the bound copies, there will obviously be the thicker one. On that, within page 1, there's the opinion in there. I won't go through that in detail, but essentially to note with it is that there really is no change from last year. And I'll talk about the things that did change this year in this governance communication that you do have in front of you. So we're going to skip ahead to that one then. So starting on page 1, if there is anything that you read like cover to cover, this is a really good summary and it'll give you everything that changed between last year and this year. So that audit opinion is very, one sentence. It's a very clean report. The city received an unmodified opinion, which is the highest mark that the city can get, and there's no difference between this year and last year with that. As part of our audit, we also take a look at the internal control structure of the city, and those findings are within this section. So there were 2 this year. One of them is relating to preparation of the annual report. That's because we prep it as a service to the city. We have that finding in about 90% of the audits that we do. It's just easier for us to do it to stay current on the standards, and so really no change, and I wouldn't anticipate that one to change anytime going forward. Just because it doesn't make sense with the cost benefit of actually staying current with everything and making sure that nothing is missed in these financial statements. The second one relates to an adjustment that we had this year, and I'll talk more about that as we go further into this letter. So then compliance findings, this would be if we noticed like a state statute not being followed or something with like a grant or something like that. There were no compliance findings in that regard. And one thing that I do want to mention that's not shown on here is, Scott's gonna, he's laughing at me. We did, so in previous years, we had what's known as a single audit, and that's a compliance audit relating to the city's grant dollars with like ARPA funds. There's been like CDBG grants that have been pretty large that were a couple years ago. This year, we were able to do what's known as an examination report on the ARPA dollars that the city received. So it's like a slimmed down single audit, and so it's a lot more cost effective. And we did do that audit. There were no findings with that, and we just don't have a section for that within this letter. So everything looked good from that perspective. We're taking a look at whether the costs were allowable and following their guidelines, and there were no issues with anything that we saw in that regard.
Yeah, and kind of what that is because you spent down your ARPA money, they actually finally, the feds made a thing. If you're going to be a single audit just because it's ARPA money, we can do that versus a full single audit.
Yep.
So we were able to do that because you didn't have, as Elizabeth said, you didn't have any of the CDBG dollars. You didn't have any of the other large dollar amounts this year. So we were able to do it with just the ARPA. So.
Okay. All right, so moving into page 2, this is a letter that we issue every year, and like I said, it gives a summary of all the major points that are going on. It's going to cover things like any type of adjustments that were done, accounting policies that changed, if we had any disagreements over anything, and essentially no news is good news. So at the top of, or in about the middle of the page, you'll see it has the accounting policies section. This was one of the items that did change from last year. There were 2 Governmental Accounting Standards Board, or the GASB board, changes that were required to be implemented this year. One of them is relating to GASB 100. You'll see it peppered throughout the full report when you get it, but essentially if a fund has to move from the back to the front or the front to the back, they just more explicitly disclose it within the report. So that was something that we are able to take care of on behalf of the city when we prep the financial statements. That's not anything that Pam has to change from her recording standpoint. It's not anything that the city, has to do differently or anything. We'll take care of that one. It's just the fact that the standard changes how it's disclosed. Then the second one relates to GASB 101, which has to do with the city's compensated absences. So these are all of the vacation, sick leave, comp time. The old standard, the way that it was written, the city was only required to disclose potential cash payouts. So if those benefits carried forward into a previous year and an employee was subject to a cash payout in a future year, it was shown as a liability on the city's books. Under the new standard now, instead of just looking at the cash payout that was occurring, they also wanted to know what could be used in a future year, meaning the expense is recorded every single year and the use would happen in a future year or a payout. Because of we're taking a closer look at what types of benefits the city has, what might need to be recorded under the standard. We discovered that within the general fund, there was the retiree escrow account for the sick leave liability that is slowly getting paid out. And when you start to look at some of these definitions under this new standard, it didn't really fit the bill to be within the general fund anymore. So I mentioned before that we had a material adjustment this year, and that's because we had to pull that liability out of the general fund, and it's only shown in the government-wide financial statements. So you'll see that movement in the full report. We do anticipate that that's just a one-time item. It's now properly disclosed now that we looked into, what's being recorded in there and what is the actual definition, moving that into long-term rather than short-term, because there really isn't a current liability over those funds. Does that make sense? Any questions there?
Yeah, so the standard changed and the government made it more difficult to understand. And then when they did that, we started looking and said, okay, this liability that was the city recorded for the retirees that would be paid out isn't correct based upon the new standard, and we had to move it.
Okay.
So that's why there's a material adjustment. Again, it was so complicated that the GASB board made it that a lot of people, it took a while.
It's a good thing then.
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
It made your fund balance go up by quite a bit. Oh. But it's now restricted, so it's still set aside for that amount.
Okay.
Right? So that amount is set aside for those retirees that have those future payouts.
Yes.
As restricted.
Okay.
So, yep.
Yep.
Anytime I can make fun of the GASB board, I'm going to.
Yes.
And it's your people.
They're his favorite. Okay, top of page 3. The city has a number of estimates, and in this letter we disclose what the most sensitive ones are. There's 2 for the city. One of them is relating to the OPEB liability. The city obviously contracts with Foster & Foster to calculate that liability. We take that data and that gets put into this report. But obviously there's a lot of unknowns with that liability, so that's why that one's a little bit more sensitive, and that's just the nature of it. You have no idea how much that might be 20 years from now and so on. Or, well, I guess they do have an idea, but there's a lot of different inputs that impact it, right? And then the second one relates to the incurred but not reported, or the IBNR liability, with the health insurance, just because we do use the TPA's data in order to determine what that liability looks like on the books, but obviously they're picking a point in time and estimating what may have been incurred but hasn't been submitted yet. And with anything in healthcare, that can take a long time. So sometimes those liabilities can be different than what you expect. So those are the most sensitive ones that we just like to make sure that you're aware of those within the financial statements. Then going down the page, uncorrected misstatements. We have the ability, the financial statements are materially correct. That doesn't mean that we're going to find every little error that's within these financial statements. We're not looking at every single transaction. But if we have items that raise to certain dollar thresholds, we're required to disclose them to you as governance. And we did have one item that, because it is easier, and rather than making the report more complicated, we're just choosing to disclose that rather than adding it into here. And that related to GASB 101. So I mentioned that we adjusted the beginning balance on the government-wide financial statements relating to all like your general government, public safety, public works functions. There was also a component that impacted the water, sewer, and storm aspects, but it was much smaller. So we just disclosed that rather than actually implementing it throughout. And that's all, in line with the standards and what is required to happen. It's just the fact that we have to bring it to your attention in this report.
So really what happened was we calculated the ending balance to where it should be, and instead of going back and doing a adjustment to the beginning,
Yep.
we just kind of ran it through current year expenses for those dollar amounts. So the ending balance is correct.
Yeah. It's easier than doing it throughout the entire report. And it's easier from a accounting standpoint in Pam's books. So easier.
Yep.
And then the corrected misstatement, that again is just talking about that change that we had to do with that general fund liability. So like I said, it just keeps showing up within here, and you'll see that.
And you'll see it in the next page.
Yes.
It's just there, but the rest of it is required communication there, but you can see, same thing. It's all regarding that new standard.
Yep.
So
Then I'm going to skip ahead to page 9, which is where the summary financial information starts. So this shows a comparison between 2024 and 23 and all of the fund balances across all funds. Most of this information is pretty routine. You'll see up in the restricted section, we have that new category for that sick leave escrow. So we pulled it out of the general fund liability and showed it in that line instead. So that's where that ended up. And then there's the unassigned fund balance, or the rainy day funds. We're always looking at where that fund balance is sitting. It did have a 14% increase, and it did increase over $1 million from last year, so that's positive news. One thing that Pam and I were kind of discussing today was how the police and fire contracts were finally settled. I want to say it was in April of this year. And now that the settlement of that has occurred, they've estimated the amount that is owed in back pay to be over $600,000 plus.
The amount we did pay it out
You
already.
did pay it,
so,
okay.
Including the WRS interest, it's been over $640,000 that we paid out then between police and fire on those contract settlements. So that will decrease what this amount was, because we had been budgeting all along every year for increases, but now we're finally paying it out in 25. In addition, I think some of that fund balance growth is due to some of the stuff that we're carrying over.
Yes. with
Right,
the
so there are
budget.
projects that we just didn't finish within 24 that we got approval from council to carry over to 25, so that's part of that as well.
Yep. So those are all items that are obviously going to impact that fund balance. And I always caution that whenever you're seeing positive news like that, you always want to be trying to take a look at what's your 5 to 10 year plan with those funds and where might your holes be, because these are logical options that can sometimes speak for those holes in a future year. But we've seen where places go a little bit spend crazy, and you don't want to necessarily get yourself into that position. So I urge to look out to those future time periods.
So unassigned is the unassigned reserves thing we always talk about, and what's that percent at right now? Because we wanted to keep it between
25 and 35% is
25.
our goal, and I'll let Elizabeth get to it.
Yeah, it's over.
35% would be 8.1 mil.
Okay, so it's over.
Yeah,
But you
you're
know,
over.
the 600,000 coming off. For
Yes.
I mean, there's nothing we react to right now,
Yeah.
but it's
Yep.
it's going to be a conversation. Obviously, we're going to have. I'm assuming. Okay,
It's a lot of softballs.
even the 600 still puts us over if we take that out. Yeah. All right.
Yep.
Thanks.
Yes, no problem. Okay, then everything else is looking pretty similar prior year to this year. The one item that'll draw your attention to at the very bottom, it has the funds that have deficits in their ending fund balance. You can see last year, if I total those deficits, it was at about 6.6 million. This year it grew to 8.6 million. Some of those are obviously within the TIDs. That's where that TID projection planning really comes into play, where they're going to be and, you know, how they're going to come out in the end. So I would just monitor those balances and keep your eye on them. And if there's anything that needs to be adjusted, consider thinking about that.
Yeah, and a couple of things that I'll call out on the pool. You can see on the bottom, pool capital projects, there's a plan in place that you guys are doing something different. It went from about $1 million to $781,000 deficit. And then you can see your public improvements went from a deficit to a positive, and I know that's with debt proceeds. But Pam has been working through that the past couple of years to try to, you know, have a little bit more clarity why it's gotten there, how we can do that in the future. So, I mean, what I'll say from this standpoint, from all your funds, the general fund's in great financial shape, but also knowing that you have a future, or you not even future now, right? In 2025, you had a large payout that's going to bring down that general fund balance. So your general fund's in good financial shape. Even with that payout, you're over, but not by huge margins. You know, so general fund's in good shape. Where you're at in your capital projects funds makes sense now. Your pool fund, you know, there's a lot more clarity how that's going to be solved. And then you have your TIFs, and that's just the nature of your TIFs. That, you know, that they're going to go in a deficit because, you know, sometimes you might do some projects and then it's in the next year's borrowing or something like that. So, you know, the TIFs is something to monitor, and I know the city does that with multiple people. In Kim's back, so I know she's going to look at those TIFs a lot. You know, so like I said, it's from a financial standpoint for the governmental funds, the city's in good financial shape. Yes. Continues to be in good financial shape. I was at a meeting at 5 o'clock earlier today, and they weren't in such good financial shape a couple of years ago, and now they're great. So, but you guys have continued that path, and you know, it's good.
We like a smooth path. That's good.
Yep. Talk on the general fund, you know, it's kind of the same thing. We went over all the general fund here, and then you can see the tax incremental districts. We just a little bit more information here. Nothing that we're going to really go over, but just more information than anything for the TIFs on page, you know, 10 and 11 for you guys that if there's questions on that. So I'm going to turn it back over to you.
All right.
No.
Page 12, this gives a little bit of a synopsis on the medical self-insurance funds. Couple things to note on here. It has the line called the change in net position. It went from, you know, you're using fund balance of 318,000 in 2023, and in 2024 it was a use of fund balance of 875,000. So 2 years, that's, you know, over 1.2, nearing 1.2 million dollars in just those 2 years alone. I know that's something that you've been monitoring.
Yeah, we did a large rate increase last year, and we are proposing another 10% increase this year on the health insurance because we are spending a lot more than we're bringing in on the premiums.
Yeah, and I'll a little history behind that. A couple of years ago, and I think, yeah, if you look on the
It's
next
on the
page,
chart, yeah.
you can see that the balance was very high, and the thought was, hey, we have a lot in reserves. We're not going to raise rates. We're going to keep it steady until it you know, we use up a lot of the reserves. Now it's time to say, now we need to increase rates. I think at one point, they actually even possibly decreased rates.
Decreased rates, and they gave holidays. Where
Correct.
They weren't even charging.
Correct. And now you can
That was
see
very
the-
recent, right? That was 2020.
It was before I was here, but
21, right? Very
yes,
recent. After you-
It was. I thought it was like 22 or 23.
Yeah,
It wasn't
22 or-
that long ago.
was 2 million.
That the balance was high, and now you can see how quickly it can go. So that's where the balance, you know, you don't even have enough in your net position to cover, you know, if you had another year in 24 like you did in 23, or 25 as you did in 24, sorry, you know, it would be in the red. So
What does 10% generate hypothetically, or ballparkish? Do you know? Or what?
260,000.
We're making some plan changes too.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I've been working with Shannon.
And sometimes it can just be a high cost year too with your claims,
Sure.
right? So that can go up and down too. But like I said, from a cash and net position standpoint, now you're in a spot that, oh boy, now we gotta do some adjustments. So
So that monitoring and self-correcting is really what's key here. And you're already doing those pieces, so. All right, moving into page 14, this is the water utility. Water utility has been a hot topic, I feel like, over the last number of years.
yes.
So, and feel free to
Nope,
interject.
go.
You have
You-
history.
Nope,
So
you go.
All right. So the trigger with the water utility is that if you look at the income statement of the water utility, which is like the top half of this, you can see that the change in net position looks positive. It doesn't look like a negative type of item. But obviously there's been some advances that are going on. There's severe negative cash in the water utility and so on. So the better metric to look at from the utility standpoint is the cash flows. And that's at a summarized version is at the bottom of that page. So you can see that in that top section, it's calculating a number that's an amount available to fund capital assets. And right below that, the city had spent over $1.4 million in that infrastructure. So you're spending significantly more than what you're taking in from those user charges. I was talking to Pam a little bit today, and the city did a rate study with the Public Service Commission, which is exactly what you want to do. A year ago?
Last year, we increased rates, and we actually met, Scott Thorson and myself met with Ginny, who we contracted with then to do the rate study, to do another one that council had approved at the last meeting to approve another rate study. So
Yep.
we are looking at another rate increase for next year here.
Yep.
Yeah.
This,
And what I can say is, from an operational standpoint, it looks good, right? You're bringing in, $1.3 million from operating, your operating revenues less your operating expenses. That's great, right? Your debt payments aren't that big to the debt outside yourself, 110,000, and then you have a payment in lieu of tax to the city. 733,000 looks great, but you spent 1.4 on capital. You spent double, so it's almost like I try making everything to a personal relationship, it's a personal thing. It's like, okay, I just made $1,000 this month myself. Well, I just went and spent $2,000 on a new car, and tried paying cash, right? So, and I had to go borrow money from mom and dad because I didn't have enough, and that's what the water utility do is keep on borrowing money from the city general fund. So in a way, the general fund has this large fund balance, which is nice, but it keeps on borrowing money to the water utility because they keep on overspending on capital. Not from operations. Operation looks good, but in the city of De Pere is an older city. It has infrastructure needs, especially water infrastructure needs. You don't want to get behind on that because then, your water, pipes and all that other stuff. So that's where you're at, and that's where has to be looked at. You guys are looking at it, and it's just trying to make progress to get out of that capital deficit spending. Let's just call it that. So,
and it'll take time. It's the trigger with the PSC is that you're doing what you should be with increasing rates to try to cover some of these costs and so on. It can't happen right away, and it takes time to build up what's already been spent.
yep. And you can see on the bottom, due to city's other funds, 2023 was about 5.2 million. 2024 it's up 5.9. So it went up, right?
Yep.
So like I said, that's where I keep on saying you keep on borrowing money from mom and dad. So
So the plan is in place, and it's a good plan that we have going right now, right?
It's your only option.
Okay.
Yeah.
but you almost have to follow it. If you're only
But
if
it's
you
only
say you're,
option,
if you
but
say you're
enough?
going to spend $1 million in
But we couldn't
capital,
do it right away. We had to do something else prior to be able to trigger that, correct? So so we're good.
Well, I don't know where the new study's going, but
Yeah.
the
Increase rates again, and we're planning to borrow here tonight.
Yes, and that's going to be a change in
Yep.
how you then build that into your rates,
Correct.
which
Showing
will
that-
take time.
Unfortunately, the PSC wants to see that we have that debt. Otherwise, our ratio right now is showing we have very, very little debt. We don't need to
But
go.
that was part of the scheme. To
We
make
don't
sure
need to
could show
increase the
debt we
rates.
have,
So
correct?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a little bit of a game to play, but the important thing, you're doing what you should be. And Ginny Hins is phenomenal with all of that stuff. She's very aware with cash deficits and working with municipalities. And looking at 5 to 10 year plans with her too, and where your cash flows are going to come in with a water utility. Highly recommend that.
So yeah, but then we're budgeting to spend $700,000 in capital. We can only spend $700,000 in capital. We can't spend 1.4. That's the bigger thing to follow, right? No, we can't keep on going with these projects. This is all we're spending in water. That's where you have to follow more. And I know there's change orders, and I know there's things come in when you do a project and things come up, but that's something to monitor. Oh, we overspent. Well, then maybe we can't do a project the following year. And that's one of the bigger things I would say that you probably need to look at to make sure you're following your capital plan. Because I do think there is
On you.
I was looking for it, a plan to pay some of the advance back.
Yeah, it's disclosed.
I know, I can't find the page.
It's the debt schedule we approved when we did the transfer from the general fund and the wastewater to the water. Unfortunately, it was only for the 5.2 million, because at the time, that was the amount of the deficit we had, and that has since increased, so.
So the plan is to pay back $520,000 of that principal a year with $26,000 of interest. So there is a plan in place to pay that back. But when you keep on overspending, it's tough to pay it back as well.
And that would assume no capital projects in the next years in order to cover that payment as well.
And we're going to continue with the capital
Yeah.
project.
But then you might have to find the funding source,
They're issuing
debt,
Yeah.
Yeah.
pay for those. So,
Yeah.
all right, I'm not going to beat that horse up anymore. But-
Okay. The rest of the utilities are in a better position, so we won't harp on these. Page 15 is the wastewater utility. This is one where the income statement up at the top, you had a positive change in net position of 1.5 million. It's the same thing with the cash flows. There is a positive cash flow being brought in of 1.5 million as well. So,
the only thing there is obviously that's very heavily reliant on New Water. I almost called them GB Met again. New Water and where their rates are at, and just monitor your rates with their rates, because that's the biggest expense there.
okay. And then page 16 is the stormwater utility. That one's got even less activity than the last two, so we won't harp on those. And the last component of this is just the letter that technically management is providing to us as the auditors. It's just a reminder that there's a lot of information that we're relying on from management, and these are all the different types of items that we're relying on throughout the audit. So I do encourage you to just read through these, and you can see just the gravity of what we're being provided throughout the audit. But that is all that I had in your flipping pages. Did you have something else?
No.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, again, thank you guys. Did anybody have any questions or anything?
Alderperson Conacher.
I'm just curious, you said now this is a consecutive year with the highest standard rating that you provide. Could you give, especially those who might reference this later, an idea of the margin and how much to stay there, or what could challenge that debt ratio, or something along those lines that would maybe compromise that?
Let me take that one.
You can go ahead if
All
you
right.
want to.
So I'm assuming you're talking about the opinion that is given.
Yeah.
There is no range, so we're not Moody's or S&P where we give a range of this. It's you either have a clean opinion or an unqualified opinion. Or is it unmodified now?
Unmodified.
They changed the wording. Thanks, Gatsby. Unmodified, modified, or adverse. And if it's modified, then you're not following general accounting standards. Like if we didn't implement GASB 100, then we'd have to qualify your opinion. Or if you didn't follow the standards. So as long as you're following the standards, that there's really not going to change in a rating. So our biggest thing is make sure you follow the standards if you want to have that clean opinion, and you're not saying, we have an OPEB, but we're not going to get a study for that, and we're not going to estimate that liability. That's where we're talking about. As far as the estimates that Elizabeth went over, the new standard changes, keeping up on all that, and going forward. So there's not like a rating agents. It's just like follow the standards, make sure everything's correct, make sure your accounting is up to date. Let's just call it that.
So it's not so much about the financials as it is the procurement of the process.
It's really, I guess you can say that. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we would have to have like a We said this needs to be done, and Pam told us no.
No, we're not going to do that.
Like that.
Yeah. Then we'd have something.
Yeah.
When you talk with your debt person, they're going to talk to you about your financial plan. What you guys use, S&P or Moody's? Moody's will rate you as far as your
I
debt
see.
coverage and so on and
Thank
so
you
forth.
for the clarification.
Yep.
You brought up one about ARPA. So is the ARPA money all spent down? Is it drawn, or
By the end of 2024, we had to have it all obligated.
Obligated.
Which we did.
Okay.
There are still, I think, 3 projects that we're just waiting to spend the rest of those funds, but we have less than $100,000.
that's what we're down to then?
Yeah, that's what we're down to.
Which is really good news.
And it's already obligated to the projects that we're spending it on, so.
There won't have to be any further audits on those
On
dollars.
those things, it's just,
Because of the dollar
130,000
amount.
at the end of the year.
130.
It's in there on page 90 something.
I didn't give them the big book yet, so.
I know.
and that's fine,
I
because
just,
I know we've had updates on that in the past. I just didn't know when it finished, and so that's good news then.
Yeah, I can give you an update next meeting if you want to know what's still out there, but.
Not a bad thought, because I know that came up in the past with the council, just to know where we are.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks. Any other questions? Oh, we have them up there. All right, thank you very much.
thank you.
Scott, Elizabeth, thank you.
Yeah. And then Elizabeth will be here next week at City Council. I won't be showing up right on time next week.
So we won't wait for you then, huh? Scott running in. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do we need a action on this motion? I don't recall.
Do we just receive and place on file for,
I'll make a motion to receive and place on file the 2024 management letter and financial statements.
Second.
Motion by me, seconded by Alderperson P-Rock. Discussion, comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 5, for consideration and possible action on parameters resolution for 2025A GO promissory notes. And this is going to Justin?
I'll let
I can
Justin
say
talk
general
on this.
obligation, can't I? Or what's GO, whatever. I just read what's on here, by the way.
it's not lighting up, so we're going to give him my microphone.
Okay.
Do you want to kind of open it up, or do you just want me to go right into it?
I guess I can give you a quick summary. I included in your packet a list of the projects. That is the same list, unmodified from what we had last month, approved by this committee. Those are the updated values from what was originally in the 25 budget for the capital plan. And using those amounts and giving them to Justin here, he has created what they are recommending for the terms and the dollar amounts of the 3 different borrowings.
Yeah.
All right.
Perfect.
It'd be good
Thanks,
news,
man.
right? That's
Yeah.
what we got. All right.
Well, it's good to see everyone. Thanks for having me. So what I'm going to go through tonight is very similar to what I've presented in the past. We're going to go through a quick market update, give you a kind of what's going on in the municipal bond world. We'll go through the financing summary timeline, detailed financing illustration, and then finish with the general obligation borrowing capacity after the financings are complete. So quick municipal market update. Interest rates from where we were at the beginning of the year, where things started to settle down, and then April hit. And the tariff news came out and kind of shocked the financial world. And ever since then, it's been kind of a day-by-day, economic report by economic report as far as the financial markets moving one way or another. After April, we really saw interest rates shoot up because there was a little bit of a liquidity issue there with all the potential buyers of bonds and markets that wanted to get a little bit more clarity what's going on in the world before they started to reinvest into different things. Well, since there's been more clarity and there's been some trade deals made, etc., you've seen the stock market roar back. You've seen also interest rates from the municipal bond world come back. So we went through a turbulent time, but fortunately we're kind of hopefully through a lot of that month of craziness, and we're back to kind of a municipal bond world where we're seeing about anywhere from $10 to $13 billion of issuance every week. So it's a pretty dynamic market still to this day. So jumping into the financing or the financing summary, So there's going to be three different financings for this plan of finance this year. The first one is going to be the estimated amount of $32,135,000 general obligation promissory notes, Series 2025A. This is going to fund a variety of different capital improvement projects that Pam was just kind of talking about, that you've seen in the budget, et cetera. It's going to fund a variety of different sources between levy, different TID-related projects, and then the water capital items. The structure of this is going to be a 20-year financing maturing September 1, 2026 to 2045, with the first interest March 1 of 2026, so next year putting it on the levy. Call feature on this is going to be September 1, 2034, or any date thereafter. So on that particular day, you can refinance, prepay it if it makes economic sense to do so. And that's something that we're constantly looking at, your outstanding debt and seeing if there's opportunities. As you may recall, we did a lot of the refinancing in 2020 and 2021 when interest rates were at kind of the historic lows. And ever since then, we've been, interest rates have gone up. So it hasn't made economic sense to do so. But if there is an opportunity where rates come down and we have that ability, we'll definitely be presenting any opportunities to you. So the estimated interest rate for this would be a 4.75%. The not to exceed parameter is 5%, and the not to exceed par amount is $32,135,000. The next financing is a taxable general obligation promissory notes, Series 2025B, to fund different capital improvement projects related to mostly the TIDs. TID 7, 11, 12, 17. So when bond counsel fully reviews these different capital projects, they're looking for private use components. Is there any, developer incentives, that type of stuff that would drive this to be a taxable type financing? So the majority, we're trying to get to a tax exempt basis because you're going to get lower interest rates by doing that. There is a smaller portion of the overall package that need to be taxable, and so that's what this portion of the financing is going to be. There's also going to be capitalized interest through 2027 related to TID number 17, since that's a newer tax increment district. Give it some time before the tax increment revenue from those projects start kicking in and being able to pay the debt service related to that tax increment district. So the maturity structure for this, 2026 to 2040. First interest March 1, 2026, and again callable in 2034 or any date thereafter. Estimated interest rate is a 5.75%, the not to exceed rate of 6%, and the not to exceed par amount is $5,900,000. Again, the reason it's a little bit larger than the number at the top is because of the capitalized interest related to this financing and not knowing exactly what the interest rate is going to be. The higher the interest rate, the more capitalized interest is going to be needed. If we receive a lower interest rate, this amount is actually going to go lower than what I'm presenting you today, which, again, as you may recall in the past, we typically try to be conservative with our planning, and then when we jump into the market and get the interest rate, that's hopefully going to be lower than our planning. The next financing is going to be $7,225,000 note anticipation notes, Series 2025C. This is going to fund specifically the projects related to the parking ramp in TID number 18. This is going to have capitalized interest as well through 2027. And the reason this is the note anticipation note versus the other, putting it in one of the other financings, is because that tax increment district has a useful life of 27 years. When that was created, that was considered blight tax increment district. And so that gets 27 years versus their typical mixed use type districts that have 20 years. Well, general obligation debt in Wisconsin can only be issued for up to 20 years. So by doing the note anticipation note, that allows you to do that for up to 5 years. That gets a 5-year window from the time start to finish. And then you can restructure or refinance that financing for up to 20 years with general obligation debt, ultimately getting you a total of 25 years of debt payments if you take it out the full 5 years. So working with Dan and Pam, we kind of looked at how do we give you flexibility to since we don't know what the revenues of the parking structure are going to look like, if there is how that's all going to come to fruition here as it's being built and opening up. Once we have better information on the revenues of that, we're going to be able to restructure this into longer-term financing, better meet those cash flows with the better information, hopefully in anywhere from 3 to 5 years. So the way we're going to set this up is to have a call feature on this one in March or in September 1 of 2028 or any date thereafter. So on that particular day, depending on if the revenues are starting to look pretty solid, we can take a look at potentially refinancing and taking it out for that 20 years or taking it out the full 5 years to maturity and then refinancing it and taking it out for the full 25 years to better match the useful life of the tax increment district. So that's going to be kind of a work in progress and looking at the revenues of that and taking it in stages so we don't have larger payments than what our revenues potentially look like. So the estimated interest rate on that is a 4.75%, not to exceed 5%, and this, again, not to exceed amount of $7,300,000 because of that capitalized interest being unknown. So the next page, this goes through the timeline. So the Finance and Personnel Committee considers the plan of finance and parameters resolutions, July 8th of 2025. The preparations are made for the issuance. That's been ongoing, working with Pam and her team. We've got the official statement in the works right now. That's collecting all the information, putting it in a document that's ultimately going to be sent out to potential buyers of these municipal bonds. We're going to be going through the rating call here in the next couple of weeks. That's where myself, Pam, potentially Kim, and Dan participate on a call with Moody's and go through all the different financials, go through the audit, the developments that are going on in the city. We'll talk about fund balance, we'll talk about the debt, the overall long-term plan, et cetera. Ultimately, then they review all the information, go to their credit committee, and make a recommendation on the rating. The current rating for the city has been a AA2. That's what you've been at, and that's ultimately what we're going to be striving for to achieve. The city council would consider the Finance Personnel Committee recommendation and adopt their parameters resolution next week. Ultimately, this is the same process that you used in the past, giving authority to sign off on the final sale to the finance director, and then in her absence, the mayor or city manager. So ultimately, we're going to be watching the market and then jumping in when things look to be optimal or steady in the marketplace.
So based on what we do tonight, you can jump in starting tonight all the way until?
No. After
council.
We've got some steps.
Then you can jump in.
Yeah, so we're going to go through that rating process here in the next couple of weeks, and that takes a couple of weeks to go through that.
Okay.
And then once we get the rating back, that needs to be released out to the marketplace, and then shortly thereafter, we would
so
start
July
looking.
15th.
Yep.
Hopefully the economy stays solid until then.
So then the tentative sale of the notes would occur potentially the week of August 11th, and then closing would occur on September 4th of 2025. So now the next few pages, there's a lot of numbers, but as you've kind of heard, there's a lot of different purposes that go into putting these financings together. So the first page on page 4 there lays out the existing annual principal and interest on an annual basis for each one of the funds that are being impacted by the first financing. So you can see how they're kind of levy, TIDS, and water, et cetera, on an annual basis. If we go to page 5, it continues between the different purposes, and then ultimately you can see the first financing being that $32,135,000. The big thing to point out here is the MSC project and yard waste facility. That's being amortized over 20 years because of the useful life of those particular projects. Ideally, those have useful lives of 20 years beyond, hopefully much longer. But again, as I said, general obligation debt can only be issued for up to 20 years. So we're taking out the max on that. Usually, we've been doing the CIP-related items for 10 years or less because of those useful lives. So we kind of mixed up that piece between the CIP and the building related projects and different amortizations. And then each one of the TIDs is based on the useful life of, or the max life of those different tax increment districts. If we go to the next page, page 6, This highlights the taxable general obligation financing, the different purposes, and ultimately you can see the financing on the right side of the page for the $5,860,000. And the different purposes, you know, the TID 17 being the longest amortization because that's the newest TID that was created. If we go to page 7, this is the note anticipation note. And again, what this is showing you here is basically an interest only for the 5-year period. Ultimately, again, waiting for that parking structure to come online. And this is a pretty common thing to do for these newer type of, revenue generating projects. You want to get it built, make sure it's up and running, see what the revenues are, and then try to match up the revenues better later down the road. Now, if we go to page 8, this is what the combined debt service may look like after the different financings are now then put in place. So you can see the impacts there on the debt service between the levy and the different TIDs and then the water utility. So that's what it may look like. And then if we go to page 9, which I think is a nice little visual illustration that I've shown you in the past that shows the general obligation borrowing capacity for the city. The city's been growing at a pretty high clip over the last number of years. You've got a lot going on. It's awesome to see every time I come in. And it doesn't sound like it's slowing down at any clip. So what this shows you here is the black bars in this is your outstanding general obligation debt principal on an annual basis. And as you can see, it goes down every year because you're paying down your debt. And it's going down at a pretty good clip because you pay it down at a pretty high rate. The blue, that's what the 2020A tax exempt notes is stacked on top. So you can see how that's stacked on for the next 20 years. Then we've got the taxable notes there on top of that. And then ultimately the gray bars, that's what's remaining for your available borrowing capacity at any point. So at the end of 2025, after these financings are complete, you're still going to have 49% of your remaining capacity, or about $88.2 million at any point. So this gives us comfort that you got plenty of capacity. Now, we're not saying at any point to get near, the top, but we've been.
No, are you sure?
No, but it definitely allows us to be able to model in here that you're paying down your debts at a high rate, and that's allowed you to be able to continue to invest in the community year over year and get these projects done. So, we've got a handful of steps here to go, and Pam's been busy, getting a lot of this information together, but overall, we're in good shape as we've been in the past.
That's great news. Let's get a good interest rate number.
Yeah.
Questions, comments from anyone up here? Did you have any more in this, Justin?
Nope.
No, it's very, very detailed, very good. I love the debt capacity when we see that at the very end, so that's encouraging. Anything, Kim? Yep. All good? All right. Yes, well done, Justin. I'll make a motion to approve the parameters resolution for the 2025A general obligation promissory notes.
I'll second.
Motion by me, seconded by Alderperson Gantz. Additional discussion, comments? And this will go to July 15th then, correct? That said, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Don't go anywhere. Item 6 for consideration and possible action on parameters resolution for the 2025B taxable general obligation promissory notes. Pam or Justin?
You want me to go through again?
It's just this,
It's really the same thing, right?
So this is the second one. This would be the one that was the TID.
So really nothing,
taxable borrowing.
so it's all that stuff. And anyone else can make the motion if you want. I'll make a motion to approve the parameters resolution for the 2025B taxable G.O. promissory notes.
I'll second.
Motion by me, seconded by Alderperson Quigley. Discussion or comments? We have none. That said, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 7, for consideration and possible action on the initial resolution for general obligation promissory notes.
One thing I would just comment on this is with that note anticipation note, the security behind that is that you're going to eventually take it out with general obligation debt. That's the security that gives the potential buyers the comfort to give you that lower interest rate, like a general obligation.
That's why that's the lower one then.
That's why,
Okay.
this is first. Yep.
Very good, thank you. Other questions or comments? I'll make a motion to approve the initial resolution for the general obligation promissory notes.
A second.
Motion by me, seconded by Alderperson Gantz. Discussion, comments? We have none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 8 for consideration and possible action on parameters resolution for the 2025 C note anticipation notes. Anything to add on that one, or is that all good?
That's
We
all good.
covered? I'll make a motion to approve what was just stated. Do you have it? Okay.
Second.
Motion by me, seconded by Alderperson P. Rock. Discussion or comments? All right, that said, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Justin, thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
It's a lot of information for this crew.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you.
but they were very good students. Well done, everybody. Up next, safe travels.
Thank you.
Item 9, cash and investments report. Pam, anything out of the ordinary you want to add or state?
No.
I went through it, seemed pretty good. I'll make a motion to accept and place on file the cash and investments report for May 2025.
I'll second.
Motion by me, seconded by Alderperson Quigley. I guess that would also include the yearly summary, December 2000, the whole
whole
batch.
package.
The whole batch. All right. Are you good with that, Alderperson Quigley?
Yes.
Thank you. That said, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Pam. Item 10, future agenda items. Does anyone have anything? Very good. We are now on item 11. Consideration of request by Chad Zeske, agent for Holy Smokes, to appear before the Finance Personnel Committee regarding the denial of his cigarette, tobacco, and electronic vaping device retail license application. I will now turn it over to Attorney Bungert to review the procedure for this item. It's yours.
Thank you, Mayor. Before we go through the process of how the hearing is going to work, I just want to go over a few housekeeping items, namely that this appeal will be proceeding as a quasi-judicial hearing, which simply means that there's a specific process we go through that I will be guiding you through to ensure that we have a fair meeting, that each of the parties have an equal amount of time to be able to present their testimony and their evidence, and allow for the committee to be able to ask questions and to deliberate and then make a decision based upon tonight's evidence and testimony that's presented. A couple items that I do want to note for the record: the appellant, Chad Zeske, agent for the establishment, was given notice of tonight's hearing and is present this evening, as is Assistant City Attorney Eric Erdman, who will be presenting the city and city staff. Secondly, I do need to confirm that there are no conflicts of interests that exist for any of the alders, and that no one has received any communications from any of the parties concerning the matter this evening. If no one has any disclosures at this time, then we can move on to what the hearing process will look like. In the record, we have the license application, and this is all in the packet. The license application, the agent form, the denial letter, and the appeal request. Each of the parties will have 10 minutes to be able to present their testimony under oath, as well as any additional evidence for the committee's consideration. Chad Zeske for Holy Smokes will be able to present first, followed by Attorney Erdman. Then each party will have an additional 5 minutes for rebuttal or closing statements if necessary. The committee can ask questions throughout the process, ask either of the parties or ask myself as to any procedural questions. Once testimony is concluded, we can move into closed session to deliberate and issue a decision in open session based on the evidence and testimony. And at the next meeting, I will have written findings of fact and conclusions of law, which will basically summarize tonight's proceedings, and those will be able to be reviewed by the committee and approved, and then that will officially conclude the whole process.
Very good.
So So at this point, we can move forward with the appellant, with Mr. Zeske, with his testimony, and then, sir, you'll be just administered an oath to provide testimony under oath. So the clerk can do that.
If you would please state your name for the record and then raise your right hand.
Chad Zeske,
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony and evidence you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. I was unfamiliar with this process. I've never been denied my tobacco license before. I have shops in Wisconsin, 5 other cities besides De Pere. Have never been denied. I don't have a perfect, clean record. I believe that the reason for being denied here was for a 2014 controlled substance charge, which has been cleared 11 years ago. That was a misdemeanor charge. I did get a 2020 charge, which was a felony charge, which has also been cleared, getting 3 years probation on that, and so I guess with the 2014 charge, why I did not have it on the form to fill out. I thought it went back 7 years. If it was misdemeanor, if it was a felony charge, it would have been listed. Like I said, every other city has not denied me or never had a problem. Last year in De Pere, when the changes were made to the form, the tobacco form, I was still approved. I don't know why that I wasn't, that I was denied this year. When charges, I understand that if it was something I was doing illegal through the business or something like that, that would be reasons to not renew my license, but this was 11 years ago for something, a misdemeanor charge. I was a little confused. So that's, I haven't been in any trouble for the last over 5 years, 5.5 years. Our business has been doing great. We still expand. I'm in Michigan as well as Wisconsin, 2 shops in Michigan, and 8 in Wisconsin, but six locations, but 8 stores. 2 of them are connected in strip malls. Also own a couple of restaurants up north. Have never had any problems otherwise getting anything. So this is the first it's ever happened. And yeah, so that's really all I have. I don't have a whole presentation or nothing. I would do whatever you guys would require of me to be able to get it renewed. I don't want to fight, argue, get lawyers. In Wisconsin, they are, as of July 1st, there was going to be a lot of laws with the vaping laws changes, which got extended out to August 1st, which in that case, depending on what all comes out on that date, saying what is which products are legal, which are illegal, if it doesn't sound good for the vaping industry in Wisconsin, and if that if it wouldn't have been extended and July 1st had that list, I have a feeling I would have just closed up the shop in the pier because I'm going to have to close up most of my shops due to the law changes. They're leaving out very little to continue to make money in that industry. So really, that is all I have to say.
Thank you. Now we can move on to Attorney Erdman.
Okay. I'm just going to provide you, this is the individual questionnaire that was part of your application. And I'm just going to give, because I'm going to work off of this, and hopefully for your benefit too, made some copies. This is an individual questionnaire that went with the agent portion of the application. It wasn't in the packet, but it's part of the application, so it's a separate form.
Yep, perfect.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And I think what I'll do, if it's okay, is I'll just, because this is kind of going to be the focus of what we're going through, so I think I'll start with just some questions for you, and then I'd like to just go into maybe a little bit of a background, some of the standards, and Mr. Zeske alluded to it with respect to the change in process. I understand that some forms were updated by the Department of Revenue. So this individual questionnaire, as part of the agent application, is a relatively new disclosure form, essentially. So I'm going to work off of this and just ask Mr. Zeske some questions to start, and then I'll hopefully provide a little bit of helpful context with the application background updates, and then call Officer Johnson in on just some clarification for the police department background check that's relatively new as well for this type of license. So, Mr. Zeske, did you submit this this individual questionnaire form? That's your signature on it?
This one, yes.
Okay. And so you referenced when you were speaking about the criminal history portion of it, which references it looks like a felony distribution, and then it kind of gets cut off of synthetic. Could you confirm what that conviction was for?
There's I'm trying to think what it's called. The synthetic cannabinoids, which was most people knew it as Spice or K2, which was legal for a period of time. It was banned in 2012. My wife and her mother continued selling the product, not in the stores, and I guess I was part of it, and sending money to whoever this guy was, whatever. I do have my part in it. So it was selling of spice after the 2012 ban, basically. And yes, it was like 2019, I think, the end of 2019 is when we got in trouble for that. And it was a federal charge. I received 3 years probation. I completed all 3 with, no problems, no hiccups whatsoever in those 3 years, which was actually closer to 5 years by the time court was done. It was a year and a half before court was done, which I was still going through the motions of seeing a federal probation officer. And my wife too, she got 5 years. She's almost done, and that we put in the past, wrote it off as, we are done doing anything stupid. Basically, we had kids now. That's why I didn't want her to continue to do it. We have 3 children. This really kind of scared us, where we potentially could have went to jail for like 8 years prison. And that was the most recent and last charge I've received.
As part of that charge, you mentioned selling it. Who did you sell it to?
There was customers from before, and the Michigan ban it didn't kick until later. We had customers that we met them as customers that remained our friends to this day, and it was basically hooking them up, which we understand was wrong. Yeah.
Did you sell that drug in De Pere?
No. We weren't even a thought in De Pere at that time. It was that was a long time ago. We were only in Green Bay and like Menominee, Michigan back then. This was around 2012, 2013, I believe, is when that whole thing started, that with the ban. And it wasn't something where we were, had a bunch of people lining up at the door to sell it to. It was just a few people we knew, like, probably 10 people.
You said you didn't sell it at any of your stores. Was that done outside the scope of your stores, or was that done in store?
It was outside the stores. In the charges somewhere says that we were selling in the stores. It's a mix-up. We never were. I don't even know where that came across, except that maybe from someone was a customer, and since they were a customers, thinking that we were selling out of the shops. We have never sold one illegal thing out of our shop. That has been, if the ban were to start at midnight, everything was gone. Just like in De Pere, the tobacco license, June 30th, we closed at 10 o'clock. Everything was gone. We pulled everything out of the store. And the police came in on the 1st and saw that there was nothing there for us to sell. I take my businesses very seriously. I was a heroin addict for 11 years and turned my life around by caring about, it might not seem like the best business or whatever to get in, especially for an addict, but when, I put all my blood, sweat, and tears into something, it kept me on the straight and narrow. I got roped into that selling the synthetic charge, which is why my wife got much more time than I did. But when it comes to the business, I don't do, I'm pretty strict on employees. Can't always control what they do. I never got any selling to minors or, stuff like that. I never mix business and personal. So, that type of mentality is what I have.
And you mentioned in this document and under oath that you completed probation for it. Okay. Did you get a clearance letter or some kind of confirmation that you did complete it successfully? Or do you have any details?
There should, when it was October or November 11th last year, and the last time when I was seeing my probation officer, which would have been like a month prior to that, and he said, you're up on the 11th. It was November 11th. And I said, is there anything I have to do to come in, get signed to show that I'm done? And he said, no, you should be receiving a letter. I don't know if it's via email or snail mail, but I did not ever get it. I was gonna actually I think they give you like a certificate of completion. It looks like it's something you did well, like, but I just wanted to see what it would be. But I never got a chance to see it. I'm sure it's out there. It's something I could get. And then if there was, my probation officers that I had over the time would only have high marks to say. You have to take drug tests, and I never failed, never really I didn't have any problems besides like getting speeding tickets or getting pulled over for speeding, I think is all I ever did on that whole time on probation.
And you're the president of Holy Smokes? And could you explain, like, I guess your day-to-day working at the business? And I'd like to kind of get a sense as to how that compares to what this charge is. So that's kind of my reason for asking that.
My day-to-day is overseeing all the shops, like as in making sure everything from the registers and stuff are working to or doing orders, making sure everything is correct when it comes in. I mean, I have employees that basically, I have managers that check in the products, put it on the shelves, and the employees do that, but I go shop to shop and make sure, what they're out of. Most of my time is ordering, staying on top of the new things that are coming out from the companies I deal with, going to distributors, a lot of times picking up orders instead of paying all the shipping to each individual location. I will do that. A good majority of my day is putting together what we need, finding which distributors, whatever, have it, and making sure our stores are stocked. If with these vape laws, there's and with the tariffs and other reasons for that I'm not real sure of, but the disposable vapes are probably 80% of my business, the nicotine vapes. And the big brands that everybody wants, that they sell in gas stations as well as smoke shops. I think they were trying to skirt around the tariffs. Something happened where their orders got seized. I had a feeling ahead of time that, just from being in the industry and knowing, I knew that something was going to happen. I took most of our savings and stocked up on these products before they would disappear, per se. And I see that my shops are the only ones that still have these big name products over the gas stations and other smoke shops, because I'm so embedded in with the companies. I just know most of my day is talking to people. I spend, I work probably 16, 18 hours or more a day, 7 days a week. And, it's a lot of it. I have all the ins and outs of the businesses, making sure rent's paid, just everything. It may be because I have trust issues with people, but it's an industry where it's hard to find good employees. I have very few managers that can even make it to the point of being trustworthy enough to be a manager. The business used to be my wife and I, but then she's getting more into the restaurant businesses where I want nothing to do with that. So this has been all me for the better part of 5 years where if I'm not working, the rest of the time is with my kids. We have 3 kids, and they would say, that I work too much, but I spend all my other time, any free time I have is with my kids, but the rest of it is on the phone with work. I do a lot. I like to stay on top of it. It's something I'm into. It's like my hobby is work, is how I look at it. I don't think any other businesses, my competition, I don't think they put as much time in as I do. It's just something I care about.
So ultimately, would you say you're responsible for selling these products, or that are in your stores too?
The products that are in the stores, yeah, I choose them.
Okay. And to make sure that they comply with current
Yes,
regulations? Okay.
And staying on top of the laws, which especially being in Michigan and Wisconsin, there's always changes in the laws. And yeah, there might have been a time or two where I didn't know about something until the last minute, which would have been years ago. And I learned from my mistake. We got stuck with tens of thousands of dollars worth of pre-filled pods that were like the Juul device, that they banned the pods. I didn't know about this till a day or two before, and they didn't give us any time to try selling the products off, because these are now illegal, and they were so popular at the time. I was stocking up on them, and I didn't foresee that coming that time. So we got stuck with them and basically had to throw away all that product. And so maybe that's where I learned my lesson and don't want to, have that happen. That was a rough one, getting stuck with all that stuff and having to throw it away. But yes, it's my responsibility for things that we sell, and making sure that stores don't still have things. Sometimes something could be banned that was buried, somewhere in the store. Someone's cleaning, they think it's, like, hey, this is here, and we're like, no, you can't sell that. That's got to go. Toss it. But we're a lot more organized than we used to be, and that isn't a thing. But yeah, that's.
How many employees would you say you oversee specifically at your Pere shop?
In the Pere, we have four employee, well, 3 that are solely workers at the Pere, and then a couple floaters that float between Appleton, Green Bay, De Pere. There's not many. De Pere is one of our slowest shops, and at times it is by far our slowest shops. So it doesn't need a whole lot of maintaining. The people that work there have worked for us in our Green Bay stores before that. And so for the most part, they know what they're doing. But I do check up on them. They, keep in constant communication with them.
You mentioned a separate misdemeanor charge that did not make it into your criminal history form. And you said it was in 2014, correct?
No, that's what I believe.
And yeah, could you describe what that was for? What you were convicted of?
I believe it was for possession. It was possession of a controlled substance. I believe it was for Suboxone, which is medication to stay off of heroin, so you don't get the cravings or whatnot. I've always had doctors. There was a period of time where my doctor was in Milwaukee. I didn't keep driving down there. I bought some off the street and got caught with them, I believe is what that was.
So that particular drug is not one that has nothing to do with your shops?
No.
Okay. Have you been convicted of, and the reason you did not, and could you explain again why you didn't include that in your questionnaire?
I thought it was felonies and misdemeanors, 7 years. Going back 7 years. I don't know if this form or the old form used to say something about 7 years.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Have you been convicted of any other criminal offenses beyond the 7 years? Beyond the one we talked about?
I got paraphernalia in college. Possession of paraphernalia in college. Another time, I don't know what years, but I was probably in my late 20s down in Milwaukee. I lived there for 13 years before moving back up here. I grew up in G.O, and after being an addict, I moved home after like 13 years. So I got a couple charges down there. I had I got jumped by a kid in the bar, fought back, and I got an assault out of it, or battery or something. That was probably 12 years ago or 15, somewhere in there. I got some disorderly conducts, or me and my wife used to fight all the time. I think that's everything.
Okay. And the reason that you did not disclose those in this is because of the time lapse in your mind? You thought that it wasn't?
A while ago.
Okay. And you see that there isn't a time looking at this?
I'm looking at it to see if it was, so that would be...
That those should be... Can we, that those should be disclosed?
Yeah, I see that now. I guess...
Okay.
I didn't realize that the old form I was used to till this one. And usually most other things I ever have to fill out, jobs back, and it always 7 years. I didn't think you always have to disclose your life history, I guess. I thought people gave you a chance to do better, and not hold that against you. That's how I would look at that. If holding something back, looking back 20 years in someone's past, why do you care if there's something,
Okay. I'm good with questions of Mr. Zeske at this point.
Okay. Do you want to move on to?
Yeah. I'll call Officer Johnson, but just as a little bit more of the background, hopefully. So this particular license is granted under 134.65 of the Wisconsin statutes, and one of the provisions in there states that a city, village, or town clerk may not issue a license unless the applicant meets all the following requirements, and then subject to certain rehabilitation statutes. The applicant has not habitually been a law offender or been convicted of a felony unless pardoned. So that was the primary reason for the denial this year, was because of that felony conviction that Mr. Zeske talked about. And this was, the forms in the Department of Revenue were recently changed to allow for basically a different, a different format for disclosure. So this was, this is a recent form, and I don't know that he was asked to provide evidence of this, or this relatively recent felony conviction, but this is one of the first years where, the disclosure form would call for, him to list his felony conviction. So in the statute, there is a section about, subject to his rehabilitation efforts, which he's been talking about, that if he's been convicted of a felony, that he's not eligible for a license, but subject to the rehabilitation. So we'll talk a little bit, at the end I can kind of talk about the rehabilitation statutes as well, and kind of tie it into essentially the choice to help hopefully frame up what the choice is as far as his eligibility for a license. And we'll go from there. But I just wanted to bring in Officer Johnson just to talk about the process for, the relatively recent process for how the police department does background checks.
If you would please state your name for the record and raise your right hand.
Officer Joe Johnson.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony and evidence you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thanks, officer. And you're employed by the City of De Pere Police Department?
That is correct.
Okay. And could you let us know, or are you generally familiar with the background check process for license applicants?
I am.
Okay. Could you just generally describe that process for the committee?
So when the applications come in, whether it's for a tobacco license, a liquor license, the clerk receives the applications. Those applications are then sent over to the police department, and that background investigation component is overseen by the chief of police. He then takes the application, presents it to our administrative staff who do a background investigation looking for any prior criminal violations or anything that would be an area of concern in regards to that application, and then forward that information back to the chief of police, who reviews it and then makes a recommendation to the clerk and the city as to how he thinks they should proceed with the application.
Okay. And is it your understanding that this was actually the first, for this type of license, for the cigarette vaping tobacco license, this was the first year that the police department conducted background checks for that type of license?
Correct. With the change in addition of the form by the Department of Revenue, this would be a first for this new term.
Okay. And to your knowledge, was the recommendation was to deny this particular license based on the?
Correct. The chief's recommendation was to deny it.
Okay. Those are all the questions I have. If you would like to ask any questions, committee.
Anybody?
Can I ask a question by chance to the officer? So, because this form was changed, this is the second year of this form, but you guys didn't do that type of, this is your first year. Even though the form came out 2 years ago, you didn't do those background checks 2 years ago, is that what you're saying? Because the form was changed.
This would be the first year for licensing cycles that our department did use them, correct?
Okay.
Joanne?
That makes more sense to me then, yeah.
Carrie has something to add as well.
Just to respond to your question on that, the forms did come out last spring in 2024. It was during a time of transition in the clerk's office where our longtime deputy clerk had retired. Our new clerk was not in place yet, and we just did not have staffing levels at that time to implement the new process. So this is the first year that the CBT license applications were sent over for background checks.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you,
Thank you.
officer. Attorney Erdman, you can proceed with the remainder of your.
Yeah, I'm not going to call any witnesses. So like mentioned, this particular statute references, the felony and the subject to rehabilitation efforts. Mr. Zeske came in to show evidence of his rehabilitation and fitness, which is permissible under Chapter 111.335, which talks about things that he can talk about, and the standard then is if the individual shows competent evidence of sufficient rehabilitation and fitness to perform the activity, the licensing agency may not refuse to license the individual from licensing based on that conviction. So there are certain things that can be considered. There's sort of the federal release documents, documentary evidence to show, sufficient rehabilitation fitness to perform the activity, the nature and seriousness of any offense which he was convicted, circumstances relative to the offense, the age of Mr. Zeske at the time the offense was committed, length of time that's elapsed, and then there's a catch-all for all of the relevant evidence of rehabilitation and present fitness presented. So that's sort of the choice here. It's this conviction that he did disclose, and then whether or not you believe that he's presented enough to show that he's been rehabilitated, which is his right. Under 111.335, there's an additional prong that essentially it's not employment discrimination because of conviction record to refuse to license somebody if they've been convicted of any felony, misdemeanor, or other offense, the circumstances of which substantially relate to the circumstances of the license activity. So that's why we wanted to talk a little bit about that misdemeanor conviction regarding the possession of controlled substance to see kind of the circumstances of that and how whether that may substantially relate to his license activity. And then as far as what substantially relate means, just to help kind of clarify this, because it's relatively new, I think, for all of us, and the process has recently changed. Essentially, it's the way I think that the courts look at applying the substantial relationship test. It's not just the immaterial identity between the circumstances of the crime. It's really the material circumstances leading to that particular activity and the circumstances in the workplace that present opportunities for recidivism in light of the character traits revealed by the circumstances of that particular conviction, in addition to any character traits that may show the seriousness and the number of offenses, how recent the conviction is, and whether there's a pattern of behavior is all stuff to consider with the substantial relationship test. It's really factually specific. So that's really what we mean when we say, do these convictions substantially relate to the license activity? So that's, in my mind, the choice is what we've heard, as far as convictions, do they relate to, his ongoing activity in a material way? So I think that's essentially the choice. He did present, a little bit of background as well as far as, the circumstances of those convictions. But we wanted to get into that in order to kind of hopefully provide a little bit of a framework for the committee in making its decision with respect to whether these are essentially disqualifying convictions or not. And hopefully, what we talked about helps shed some light on whether they do. So. But yeah, the city, based on those convictions, specifically he mentioned some other convictions, misdemeanor convictions, but really the two that, appeared most relevant, were the misdemeanor from the possession of controlled substance that he talked about when he was an addict, and then the more recent one, the felony, in addition to sort of that specific call out in the statute for any felony convictions and the felony conviction for synthetic distribution of that particular drug that he talked about. So those were the items of concern, on the part of the city, and was the reason for the denial. And the reason it was caught this year was, just based on the change in the overview process.
Okay. Do either of the parties have any rebuttal arguments? Mr. Zeske, was there anything else you wanted to add?
When it does talk about in listing your convictions in relation to the type of license you are getting, I've talked to the state of Wisconsin a couple of times to try to get a clearer understanding of that, and it was much easier for them to compare it to like a liquor license, and because it is tobacco vaping, and the way they say would be like if you were selling loose cigarettes, which is illegal, opening up a pack of cigarettes, selling them out that way. The selling to minors, something that basically would have to do with the cigarette tobacco or vaping devices. That being said, that's why I disclosed my felony as well. Even in previous years, I only would list my convictions how they were related to cigarettes, tobacco, and vaping. That part of it has not really changed much, but he is correct how there's a lot of leeway if how you can say if it's my convictions have anything to do with me selling tobacco, having a smoke shop and selling these things. They are slightly open to interpretation, where that is why, I mean, from now on, I would, in the city of De Pere, I for sure would list my whole history. But in Green Bay, years ago, when I had questions on that, the woman at the city said, do not tell them more than you want them to know. And if it doesn't relate to cigarettes or tobacco, do not put it on there. That is what I was told, and that was a long time ago. But that is just the other reason why I called the state about that if I have to list things, because even when it said misdemeanors relating to the type of license you were getting, that is why I did not put that as well, besides the timeline. Just clarifying that.
Okay, thank you. Attorney Erdman, anything final to add?
No, I think that helps maybe show his, get to the intent of it, which I think is helpful. But, the questionnaire just asked blanket for those. So, I don't want to disagree with him and say, woulda, coulda, shoulda. I think he acknowledges that he should. Mm-hmm. But, that's why we ask about those convictions, because we don't, they're categorized in a way that appear to be, on first glance related. So that's why we ask about it at this hearing, to see ultimately if they do relate to what the license activity is. So hopefully that's been helpful.
Okay. All right. At this point, we are concluded with testimony. So we can move into closed session at somebody's motion.
All right, I'll read the notice first and then have the motion, correct?
Yes.
Thank you, by the way, both of you, all three of you. Please take notice the Finance Personnel Committee may convene in closed session pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 1985-1, deliberating concerning a case which was the subject of any judicial or quasi-judicial trial or hearing before that governmental body. B, considering dismissal, demotion, licensing, or discipline of any public employee or person licensed by a board or commission, or the investigation of charges against such a person, or considering the grant or denial of tenure for university faculty, I read all this, faculty member, or taking formal action on any such matter, provided that the faculty member or other public employee or person licensed is given actual notice of any evidentiary hearing which may be held prior to final action being taken, or any meeting at which final action may be taken. The notice shall contain a statement that the person has the right to demand that the evidentiary hearing or meeting be held in open session, considering financial, medical, social, or personal histories or disciplinary data of specific persons, preliminary consideration of specific personnel problems, or the investigation of charges against specific persons, except where Pere B applies, which, if discussed in public, would likely to have a substantial adverse effect upon the reputation of any person referred to in such histories or data, or involved in such problems or investigations. The Finance Personnel Committee may then reconvene thereafter in open session pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 1985-2 to take action on any matter discussed in closed session or for such other purposes as are allowed by law. I'll make a motion to go to closed session. Motion by me, seconded by Alderperson Cuniger. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Jamie, we're going to head into closed session. At this time, I'll make a motion to go back to regular session.
I'll second.
Motion by me, seconded by Alderperson Quigley. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. First, before we give our decision, we want to thank Officer Johnson for giving up most of your night for being here. Learned all about finances. Wasn't that exciting? Thank you. So thanks to all those involved, including you as well. So here is our motion. I'll make a motion to approve the appeal contingent upon submission of documentation confirming successful completion of probation for the felony conviction in 2020.
I'll second.
Motion by me, seconded by Alderperson Gantz. Any other discussion or comments? That said, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. I believe you understand then what was? All right. All right, that said, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Motion by me, seconded by Alderperson Gantz. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We're officially adjourned. Thank you, sir.